Hey, Anu, what's up?
Hey Phil, doing good. What about you?
Good. So, I was thinking after like the big task release, we could have a small exchange
Have the
about
swing
the
for sure.
how, the why, the who, and maybe it's interesting to some people. So, you up for that?
Sure, let's do it.
A bit of context. All right, so I'm a co-founder at Missive. Missive is a multiplayer email client. Alno is head of design. And what we're about to talk about, the task, is like is first. It's your first like contribution in big project, and we released that like a week ago now. Like yeah, like let's talk about like how like your first task at Missive, like understanding the product, how you did that, and like and then your
Mhm.
first assignment. Like
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, when I joined, I wasn't that familiar with Missive, and I think Missive, it's one of the value prop. I think is the flexibility. So a lot of customers use Missive in different ways. So I think I admit to myself that I will never learn Missive, fast enough to know all the tips and tricks. So I think even starting first week or even second week, I started reaching out to customers that have asked for task improvement because there was a feature that was already available in Missive. And I scheduled like, a dozen call with different size of company. It can be, there were like a comedy club in Berlin. So it was a team of 3. There were like a property management in Australia. It was like a team of 25. There were like accountants in the US. There were like a shop that fixed cars also in the US. So I really tried to get like a pretty large spectrum of customer from different industries. And I've learned that some of them have a lot of like power users, but only for a specific area of the product. So they have like 200 rules. Some of them don't understand the assigned to me. So it was like early on that was like, okay, not everyone knows Missive,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I think it's one of our biggest challenges that Missive being a multiplayer email client, it can bring values, it can add value to all types of businesses of a lot of different sizes. And some are really early tech adopters, some other have no desire to be in front of a computer.
Mhm.
And so there's like the range of user emotion when using the product is different. Some will email us a lot about all the small improvements we can do. Some we never hear about. Some will read the doc. Some will not. And Missive being like a tool that can be imposed by a business to their employees. Some are really into it. Some are less into it. And that's something I realized. I think funny story, but I realized last year when I did my first customer trip to New York City, and we met like I think 10 customer, and there was one, and it was so funny because I think it was the last one we met, and like we arrived at his office, and he was like, "Hey Phil, I love Missive. Like it solves all of my problems, but now you got to meet my employees. They don't like it. Now convince them." And then he brought like 20
Yeah.
people, and like like they didn't like some enjoyed it, but some other was just confused because they were never teach how to use it, right? And that made me realize, okay, so we like the people we exchange emails with are not necessarily the people using it, right? So the boss might be really tech early adopter, but not necessarily his employee. So that put things into perspective. Uh, but back to the task. So
Mhm.
why do you think like I mean at first I told you like, oh, we have to work on task because it has been requested by a lot of our customers. So after me having said that to you and you doing the interview, like what was your mindset?
So I think I got like a lot of different point of view from customers, and it was clear to me that they were not having all the same problem. It was not like problem A and here is solution A. It was more like task. We had to design task in a more, I would say in a system thinking approach. when you have to think of like all the different problem, our customer have, and what of those what of those problem can be solved with a better task management. So it was not, solution A for problem A and solution B for problem B. It was more thinking about what are all the different problems that might be solved with tasks. And you might remember, but the first prototype I did with task was almost not considering conversation and email, was pretty much only kind of a task management. And it was one of our, I think, our first fight, mostly because I was only considering the task inside the conversation, but I was not considering the conversation itself as a task.
Yeah, and to be, because I've been on all of the stage of the journey of the product. So at the beginning, it was just email threads you could chat on. There was no assignment. Like assignment came later on when customer were like, "Well, it's fun to chat, but I mean, we need accountability. I need to know, okay, that has been assigned to that person is going to take care of it." And later on, we also create small tasks in conversation because usually in an email thread, there's not necessarily just one unit of work. Like it's just like for customer support, you assign a thread, you're responsible to reply, and that's it. But let's say a factory that receive orders via email, the email might be assigned to the thread might be assigned to somebody who's going to exchange the emails. But in those emails, there's different unit of work tasks that need to be assigned to different people. So that's why we integrated task in conversation, and that's where you came on. Is people were like, well, those small unit of work in conversation are nice, but now it's hard for us to track them in Missive, to manage them in Missive. We always need to go in the conversation with the task. So people were like, we need a way, a central place where I can see what's assigned to me, right? Or what's assigned to my employees. And having email thread managed one way and those small tasks a different way for me was a no-go because I didn't want to create one more place to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we settled for like, okay, let's try to find a system where it merge both. And that's not easy. And I think it creates friction and we need to still improve that to make it obvious. But it was something important to me, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was also aligned with you. As soon as we play with this first prototype, I knew that long term they will both be considered as, something on your to-do list. Doesn't matter if it's the conversation itself or just a unit of the conversation. And it's also, again, when I talk with some of these customers, I remember this web agency in Belgium. They say, all the new customers, they come through an email. And when we get the new customer in an email, we get the same list of tasks. It's like, get a quote, find a domain name, make sure the team has availability within the next few weeks. So they were always doing the same task at every new project, which is, a conversion was started with as a project. And on the other side, I remember this accounting, there was like, I never used the task inside conversation because this client, this new email I assigned to, for example, Jennifer, and now it's Jennifer inbox and she deals with it. But I remember I've seen like customer with like multiple element pinned on the sidebar, which is assigned to others, and they just put filter from each of the employees, and there were like 100 of items in each of them. So that's also at this time that we feel like if this task view also merge conversation, a manager or anyone will be able to filter and group thing in a way that is definitely easier to digest.
Yeah, I think that like the task view we shipped last week is a major improvement to actually be able to have visibility on what your team is working on versus like the previous assigned to other web mailbox where it's just like a flow of conversation ordered by like what happened last, which is not a good way to plan
Yeah,
it.
I mean, we know some people have like kind of hacked the snooze, right? So they can reorder the thing the way they want it in their assigned to me. And I think with the new version, you can simply, sort by due date or group by specific assignees.
But that's interesting because we go back, why is it's difficult to ship such a new feature? And because Missive is used by a wide range of people, they all define and create their own specific workflow. And sometimes we're not even aware, right? And so we might change a button or remove a button in some circumstance, and then we receive an email, oh my God, like I can't use Missive anymore. And we had no idea, right? It's like, okay, like wait a minute, okay, like yeah, it makes sense. Like I understand now why you like that button in that place. Do you know, like, and then we need first, okay, can we teach them about a better way, or is their point relevant? Should we reintroduce that? So I feel like when we do a big change, there's always a lot of stop and go. It's like, oh no, yeah. And I've always worked on this for years now, so I'm not familiar with other businesses or startups, but I don't know if it's like special to us or if it's everywhere. But we have a really committed customer. We really love Missive, and it's like it's their tool. They live in it. Like, and when we change thing around, it's that we need to be careful. So as a designer, like, was this new to you, or that level of commitment for a customer, or?
No, I mean, like in many of my former companies, we also get like some, customer that were really involved and really like to share the feedback and how they feel about the latest update or things they would like to change. So
And those are the best because to me they're kind of they really signal to you when you do something wrong. Um, the danger is like because there's a big majority of users that never write to you, you still need to track and try to
yeah.
understand if other people actually like the changes you've made or not. And
Mhm.
so it's always balancing like the bigger voice, which I are really important because those people, as soon as you do something, they'll reply with feedback, right? And you want that, but then all the others would never, you never get feedback from. You still need to kind of have a way to listen to them. So like for last year, we scheduled interviews. We've done customer trips. So we try to do things to have their voice also being heard. But like I said, so yeah, so you're not stressed by a committed
No, not really. But I
user
think it's
base.
also the fact that I think, Missive have been around for many years. And I think over the last, I would say 4 or 5 years, this update was probably one of the biggest or the thing that bring a lot of changes for people that
Yeah,
have used, Missive for many years. And as I said earlier, I know that many have also built their own hack or their own, muscle memory around specific uh,
yeah,
workflow, but it was not necessarily intended to do it this way. And I think
yeah.
we came into this idea to make it easier for them, but they were not necessarily ready for these changes.
And even me, remember when I first
Yeah, yeah,
switched to
even
the
you,
new
yeah.
version, it was like, well, what? Okay,
Took
like,
time for
no,
sure.
there's a lot of problems. Like, whoa, stop everything. But then, well, we fixed things, we changed things, but it took me like 2, 3 days to get my brain muscle adapt, and then I would revert back to the old version. I was like, whoa. Like
Yeah,
this
it's
is the
tough.
same thing. Every time there's a new Mac OS big like change and design things, like the first few day, everybody like
Mhm.
they're like they complain, and then like a year later down the road you see those previous screenshot of the old version and you're like, oh my God, how could we ever use that? so,
Yeah,
so yeah, there's the aspect of having the customer having brain muscle and how it is, and when you change those things it usually annoys them.
yeah.
But
But
in
it's
this specific case, I think one of the problem is like it was not like last year when we released the big update with the task, it was not just the task, right? It was also a sidebar update with team
yes,
spaces. And that's what created friction. It was not about the task, right? It was really
yeah.
about, and it was something simple. It's like in the team
Also,
spaces, you can collapse the team space and then see the inbox and task view and chat for that team, as previously would just be a click to get to the team inbox. Now a lot of our customers have tens or hundreds of teams, and for them it was like too many clicks.
Mhm.
And those people were in revolt. They were like, no, like that doesn't cut it. There's just too many clicks. And so like what we did something, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think we definitely tackle another project at the same time as the task, which was to redesign the sidebar and rebuild the sidebar, because it's something I think I've learned since I joined. And I mean, the first day, my first day at Missive, you shared a screenshot of your sidebar and you told me, hey, here is how I manage my sidebar. Here is all the thing I pin in my sidebar. You should do the same. And you did the same thing with Jani. And I remember Jani, I think a few weeks after I joined, she told me like, I still don't get it. And
Yeah.
and it's the same thing with like all the call I've done with customers. Sometimes I see sidebar and I'm like, oh my God, how is it even possible, right? They have like 200 label pin and they pin just specific conversation or specific filters. And I always felt like when you bring someone in your team, new employees, you want
Yeah.
you want to make their onboarding easy, right? So
Yeah.
if you add someone, in our case, someone to the engineering team or customer care
Yeah.
team, you almost want to just invite them to those teams, and then they would have access to the inbox, to the chat, and to the task view. So we felt like building the new sidebar and the new team space was a good complement to the new task
Yeah.
view. But I think we always talk about the new sidebar as the one more thing, right? I don't know if you remember,
Yeah.
but when I did all the first prototype about the new task management and I sent to our early customers or early beta testers, I always say, oh, one more thing, we're also rebuilding the sidebar. And I got nice feedback. People are like, oh, it's nice because, it's similar to Notion and other software that we use. So it's easier for us. And even when we did the beta test, like early January, we got, I think, 15 to 20 organizations. And no one ever complained about the new
Yeah. No. Yeah.
spaces or the need to click twice to access the inboxes. But I think we also never really onboarded, like in this beta, I think the average team were between, I would say, 5 and 25 employees in those org. And I believe, as you say, that we have org that have like probably 50 and more employees, and those manage a lot of inboxes, and they probably use Missive only for the inbox feature.
Yeah, but I would say the complaints, I think they were from a different large set of spectrums of team size. I think it was more related to the amount of teams. And sometimes like you could be just five, but have 100 customer and in Missive you set up 100 team inboxes for each customer, and then that additional click made you crazy, like crazy. Uh, s- so for me, like after like I think we released last Wednesday, and then on Friday I was like, okay, like let's offer flexibility. I mean, we won't
Mhm.
fight for this because like your pitch for Team Space really talks to me and resonates to me as someone who's done hundreds of onboarding with different customer. It's like anytime they onboard an employee, like the employees is faced with an empty sidebar with just the team inbox. And it's like the admins or the owner of the organization has no control over what is the employee sidebar, and that creates a lot of friction for all new employees. And so your pitch of like saying, okay, in your old sidebar that you can customize the way you want, there's those team spaces. And those team spaces, they're controlled by the team admins, and he can put whatever he wants. Right now, it's like inbox, task view, and chat, but eventually you could pin specific labels or different things in there to really control. So that spoke a lot to me, and I was absolutely taken by surprise by the feedback. To me, it was I was absolutely blind by it. Even though when I first tried Missive, I think I told you like, oh, I don't like that double click, but then after 2 days, I was fine with it. So I like the solution we did is we simply introduce a setting, and you can basically decide to have this team space or only the team inbox, and then that like when I think we sent that newsletter with that new setting like 2 days ago, and people, like all the people that complain were like, oh my god, it's amazing, you listen to us. But I still think for new customer, the team space are going to be a great improvement. But that leads me to the last question: is what should we have done differently? Because I think like we did the task and then we attached the sidebar, and then with the sidebar came a lot of like code refactoring behind the scene, and then that introduced a lot of bugs. And so last week, not only did we had to do support for the new task, manage people not enjoying a new sidebar, plus many different small bugs that affect like small minority of users. Like like I guess I know the answer, but I guess we should reduce the scope of project, right? And try
Yeah.
to like ship value faster and have like reduce the feedback loop.
Yeah, I think definitely we could have split into multiple release. I think the challenge with the sidebar was mostly that we wanted the ability to assign tasks to a team, but then we knew that some employees, they were not familiar with the idea of even pinning the team chat. A lot of people were not didn't even know that we have chats before the update.
Yeah.
It was always here, but they were not familiar with it. So I think we felt like, oh, but if you assign tasks to a team, people are not necessarily, they would not necessarily know how to find it. So we're like, oh yeah, sidebar, my team space might need to be related to task. But I think even task could have been probably released in probably 2 steps or 3 steps, perhaps just adding the due date first, because it was also the second most requested features. That's fun because the first one was like a general task view, and the second one was like due date on task. So we could have probably, just ship due date and keep only the task in the sidebar, and probably the task view as a second, and the new sidebar as a third one.
But it does like sometimes I'm like I know we need to reduce the scope, but sometimes I'm confronted with the idea that if you do like if you go the increment road, like small increment update, you reduce the feedback loop. If you do more, you end up with 2 different product, right? And there's a possibility that you can take the long road and create something really awesome and different, right? That would be impossible if you take the incremented road, right? So because there's too many change, and going from E to D is like it's hard to actually have like so for me I'm still challenged by that, but clearly here like I do think we need to reduce the scope, and it's exciting to me because like that release took a long time, a bit longer than we thought. We thought we would release in November. Now we're in early February. What's cool is for the roadmap ahead, we plan to work on really small improvement around tasks based on the feedback we got. So I think for the next few weeks, like customers gonna wake up with updates every 1, 2, 3 weeks, and have a lot of benefit. So I'm excited. Are you?
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. I also think like, with task, took a bit longer because it was the first project for a lot of team members.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that a year ago, it was only probably the 3 of you, the 3 co-founders, and
Yeah.
now we're like 12 and, many engineers. And I think task was also, as a designer, it was obviously like a challenging, first mission. But I think for engineer was also, they were not necessarily familiar with the code base and how to plug, all
Yeah.
those new tasks with all the logic in place with email and conversation was so why it was a bit under scope.
Yeah, it's for people outside of the project, it's hard to fathom how much work needs to be done that is not apparent, right? So for people, it's like, well, it's a view, it's task, and right. But now you need to deal with the scope, the scale, the scale of the product, the usage of the product, the legacy of the code base, and if you want to do things right, there's a factor involved, and those things obviously always take a bit more time than you plan. So another argument to reduce the cycle a bit. But yeah, that was cool. That I love that talk. I don't know, you
Yeah, it
did
was a
or
nice talk. Yeah, for sure. It's a nice talk.
yeah.
I mean, we can talk about tasks for like, hours probably. It's a
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
fun
I
of
don't know.
our journey, at least mine.
I think I'm gonna push this to LinkedIn or something and see if people enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
You
Makes sense.
you don't mind? You don't mind?
Don't mind. I don't mind.
All right. Thanks, man. Cheers.
Okay. See you.